Derek.
No sound.
There you go.
And away we go. Let's try that again. Good morning. My name is Derek McCann, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this week's episode of Genos Live. And we're really excited to have Kira Aspinall with us. Kira has delivered more of a program called Genos, or Leading with Emotional Intelligence, over the last 2 years than any other certified practitioner in the Genos world. And so she has a really great insight into what are the things that emotionally intelligent leaders do, the behaviors they demonstrate that have such an impact on the people around us. And she's going to share 5 of those with us this morning. So really excited to get into that with Kira in just a couple of minutes. Before we do that, let's start in the traditional way. The chat is open. Tell us 2 things. One, where are you dialing in from? And I forgot to do my little David Frost bit. Some of you are probably way too young to remember David Frost, but he used to open the show with good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we have a very geographical audience. Let us know where you're dialing in from. And do us a favor, in these kind of anxious times, it's important to know where to go to when you need a little bit of injection of feel good or joy or uplift. What do you do? In a couple of words, what do you do when you're feeling in need of a little bit of an injection of joy, or you need to feel a little bit better? And I'll ask Aoife to share those with us when she comes on in a moment. Before we get into the main body of the session today, let me do the usual traditional, really quick 1-minute advert that tells you who we are. So Genos International are an emotional intelligence organization which covers a multitude. We basically focus upon anything that's related to the way people show up, and specifically focused upon how do people show up to one another to get the best for themselves and one another from their interactions. So that covers emotional intelligence, psychological safety, empathy, mindfulness, and a multitude of other things. At the core of what we offer are emotional intelligence assessments and a suite of training programs that cover the implementation of emotional intelligence to lots of requirements like leadership, engagement, and of course over the last couple of years, stress management and resilience. One of the things we're well known for is we also certify people as Genos certified practitioners so that they can take our tools and our programs and bring them to their organizations or their clients. We have won a lot of awards for this. The one that personally I'm particularly proud of is last 5 years we have been one of the top 20 assessment companies in the world according to trainingindustry.com. Our certification program is approved for continuing education by the ICF, and we are one of a very small number of global business partners with the ICF. One other thing I just want to add on today, which I haven't mentioned before because it's absolutely brand new. We've noticed over the last while, with all of the political changes, particularly over the last couple of weeks, and everything that's developing in the east of Europe, that our clients are talking increasingly about the extent to which they have people who are suffering anxiety that has come from the 2 years we spent with the pandemic, and now the uncertainty in Europe and the uncertainty in the global political situation. And more than anything else, people have been asking us, how can we equip our leaders and our team leaders to be able to support people who are suffering like that? So we've created a really intensive masterclass, which is 90 minutes long, designed specifically to give team leaders a really intense deep dive into what they can do to create an environment that lessens the anxiety and the stress that people are feeling right now, supports them, and helps them to identify people who might be struggling and who might need some additional assistance. Aoife will pop in later on, and may even do it now into the chat, a link to a resource page. And if this is something that sounds like it might be interesting for your organization, just let us know and we can give you a little bit more detail on it. So with that said, let me, again, as is traditional, tell you what's coming next week. It's actually not next week because I don't want to make you jealous, but I'll be lying in the sun, please God, in the Canaries next week. So I won't be here. So we are going to go for the next session on the 24th of March. And on that day, we are privileged to have Debbie Munno and Jeff Summers. And they're going to talk about a way that you can, in a very measurable way, increase productivity through emotional intelligence. They're very, very upbeat presenters. I've seen this new presentation that they're doing, and it really will get your socks rolling up and down. Now, we'll give you a link to this later on, but if you're really fast on the draw and you want to grab your camera out and hold it over that QR code, it'll connect you so you can register for it right away. If you're already registered with Genos, for reminders on Genos Live, don't worry about registering. We're going to give you reminders, and that you get lots of opportunities. Over the next several months, we have our real who's who from the psychological safety, emotional intelligence, people, mindfulness, empathy world speaking to us. So I would say, if you haven't registered for the reminders, do so, because we just send you out a reminder each week and say, here's what's coming up. Do you want to register for it? Now, with that said, let me bring in the person who does all of the work behind the scenes here on the show. Aoife, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Derek. Good to be back with you all today. Just before we proceed in further, I'm actually seeing slight technical glitch on our broadcast to LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn is actually saying waiting for broadcast. So, Derek, I'm not sure if perhaps I could move forward with introducing Kira, if you'd like to look at our streaming software, and we can.
Okay, yeah, let me do that. You're going to see my head. You're going to see my head go down. So let me put my head down and have a look and see what the heck is going on there.
And maybe mute yourself as well there. That'd be great.
I'll do that. Okay, so over to you guys, and just ignore the top of my head, folks. I have no way of taking myself out of the screen. Take care.
Good morning, Kira. How you doing?
I'm really good, thanks, Aoife. How are you?
Delighted to have you with us. Sorry about this, these little technical things happen. You're trying new software and everything, so we should get up and running shortly. I'm really excited to have you with us. For those that work in the Genos community, people tend to wait with bated breath to get the chance to hop on and have a session with Kira, ask her questions, find out how she's been working with her clients around the world. So if it's okay, I'd love to give a short but formal introduction to tell our audience a little bit more about you. And of course, then we'll hand over to you this afternoon. So, hear me okay?
Yeah. It's
Perfect,
a little bit
perfect.
glitchy. Yeah.
Technology. You know what? And we put so much time and effort into these things, but we will make do with what we can. Folks, you're very welcome. We're so delighted to have Kira Aspinall with us today, who is actually a dear, dear friend of mine. Kira founded Pinpointing Potential with a simple vision to help businesses thrive by inspiring and developing their talent. Her team offer bespoke, tailor-made solutions, focusing on people and culture consulting, leadership development, team effectiveness, and personal development. And I can guarantee this, but everything they do is designed to create measurable results, such as enhanced engagement, improved emotional intelligence in the workplace, and better collaboration among employees, which results in a workplace. She sits on a variety of boards and is a member of many different associations. To note, she is an Investors in People practitioner, a Genos emotional intelligence practitioner and master trainer, and is certified in a number of other evidence-based leadership, engagement, and feedback tools, such as Insights Discovery and Clarity 4D. A wealth of knowledge, so she is. She really is a people person through and through, which you will definitely see from the session today, and spends a lot of her time delivering interactive and innovative leadership training to teams in large and global organizations, for which I know firsthand because I've been a part of them. She's received incredible results and feedback. So today she's going to share with us 5 things you can do to start demonstrating emotional intelligence in leadership. And this is based on years and years of expertise and experience. So we are really delighted to have her with us today. We already have several questions that have been sent in, Kira. So I know you're going to share our 5, practical things you can do with us. And then we have several questions ready for you. But I'll hop back to Derek and ask, how are we doing? How are we doing
Yeah,
there?
it's interesting. Certainly on this side of things, LinkedIn is reporting that the broadcast is going out from the software. Everything seems to be connected. So if it's not working on that side, I don't think there's much we can do about it, sadly, except follow up with everybody afterwards and make sure that they get a copy of the recording. But it could be, is it still showing a little bit glitchy on your side?
On the phone, it's showing waiting for broadcast still. So people are commenting in that they're waiting for broadcast, wondering if it's an issue. But obviously the stream is happening, so best to proceed as planned. It is streaming on YouTube, so I'll go post a link to the YouTube in the link. Actually, Holly, would be wonderful if you could do that for us. Post a link to the YouTube stream in the LinkedIn event. Folks can watch it over there, and I'm sure it'll come through. And we'll make sure everyone gets the recording and whatnot. Good thing we have questions ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for being here, Kira. Really, really appreciate it. We're going to swap across to you now, and just share your screen, get you up and going. It's over to you. As soon as you're ready to go, we'll come back and take questions from the audience and move it from there. So, over to you, Kira. Break a leg.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that incredible introduction. That's a lot of pressure for me to perform now. But as in the words of David Frost or Derek McCann, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here today. You are all very, very welcome. I really, really appreciate that everyone these days is time poor. Anytime I ask anyone how they're doing these days, the resounding response that I always get is busy. So I really appreciate you joining us here. So whether you're joining us live, hopefully you're able to, or if you're watching the recording, we appreciate you being here and we really appreciate you spending time with us. So I want to start off today by very quickly understanding the what. So what is emotional intelligence in leadership? Then I'm going to chat about the how. How can we demonstrate emotional intelligence in leadership? And what can we do today to start demonstrating emotional intelligence in leadership? Then I'm going to chat a bit about the who and the where. So what have we done so far? How do we know what we're talking about? How can I sit here today with that confidence and share that with you? And then we will cover the why. So why is this important anyway? So really, whether you've heard a lot about emotional intelligence, but you're not sure what the hype is all about, or if you know what it is, but you don't really see or know how it applies in the workplace or in leadership, or if you are very experienced in emotional intelligence, I believe that there'll be something here today for everyone. So I truly believe you're in the right place at the right time with the right people. So as Aoife mentioned, I have been delivering the Leading with Emotional Intelligence programs and applied emotional intelligence programs, both within global organizations, and I've also been running public programs with individuals who are globally dispersed from different organizations, different industries, and at different stages of their leadership journeys over the last 2 years or so. So today, I really want to share with you what I've learnt. So I appreciate that emotional intelligence is one of those things that it can be really difficult to define, to put your finger onto. There's so many different definitions of emotional intelligence out there. I really like this one by Chignell that says that EQ refers to someone's ability to perceive, understand, and manage their own feelings and emotions. According to Daniel Goleman's research, without emotional intelligence, a person can have the best training in the world and can have an inclusive and analytical mind and an endless supply of smart ideas, but won't make a great leader. We all know, and I think we've probably all met in our careers, those highly intelligent, highly skilled professionals who've been promoted into those leadership positions only to be unsuccessful as a leader. We probably all know as well and have met those people with that solid but not remarkable intelligence and technical skills who were promoted into similar leadership positions only to excel and become amazing leaders. According to Goleman, the most effective and successful leaders are alike in one critical way. They have a high degree of emotional intelligence. I'm going to let you into a little secret. Many, many moons ago, whenever I set out on my business and leadership journey, I was completely unaware of emotional intelligence. I had no clue about what it was or the positive impact that it could have on myself, on my teams, on the leaders within my organization, or on the organization itself, or in fact, on my friends or my family. However, what made my journey successful, even if I didn't have that emotional intelligence label at that time, was a combination of my ability to connect and communicate and collaborate with people, and my passion for really making it work, the resilience to bounce back, setback after setback after setback, and truly believing in what I was doing and that I was having a significant positive impact on people. As soon as I was introduced to emotional intelligence, and specifically the Genos model, which I have here up on the screen, it just all started making sense. I now had this framework and the vocabulary to use every day and to help leaders to improve the way that they show up, and to help those that they lead to show up in an emotionally intelligent way, and to help organizations globally to understand better, to connect better, to communicate better, and to collaborate better. So with a focus on these competencies today, I'm going to identify 5 things that we can start to do to demonstrate emotional intelligence in leadership. Through our assessments and programs, you learn so many more strategies and tips and a full toolbox to support you on the journey in developing. But what I've focused on is the top 5 through my experience in running the program. So let's start off, number 1, top of the list that we can do to start demonstrating emotional intelligence in leadership is to become more self-aware. One of the many things that I love about emotional intelligence is that it's behavioral based and demonstrable. So when you make those changes, even those small changes, the people around you can see them and feel them. Therefore, when you do emotional intelligence training, the impact on communication and cooperation and cohesion within teams can be traumatic, because how you're showing up really matters. Another thing that I love is that emotional intelligence in leadership has this amazing ability to start trickling down. That positivity and efficiency within organizations starts trickling down when you develop that emotional intelligence within leadership. In fact, I read in a couple of places that there's been so much extensive research done in it, but 90% of top performers are considered to be self-aware. So to be truly amazing leaders, we need to be self-aware. And self-awareness really is the foundation of emotional intelligence. As a self-aware leader, you know how you feel and you recognize how your emotions not only affect yourself, but also affect those around you. I was working with a leader a few weeks ago, and this leader thrives off deadlines and loves leaving things until right the last minute because they like that buzz of working in that flow zone and getting things done. What they didn't realize was actually that this behavior was causing a lot of stress and anxiety to their teams who were waiting for them to complete some aspects and parts of the project. By becoming a more self-aware leader, then that person is more aware of how the type of deadlines causes this stress and anxiety to their teams. So therefore, they can plan their time carefully and make sure that the work is done in advance. So to help to alleviate that stress and anxiety. How can we improve that self-awareness as a leader? Slow down. It's quite ironic, and anyone who hears me saying that will probably laugh, because I live my life at a constant 100-mile-an-hour speed. So I fully appreciate that slowing down isn't easy. We live in a world where we're expected to respond and react and answer things immediately. You know, the world has changed so much over the last 20 or so years. Whenever I first went into recruitment, people would send in a CV by post, and I would get it and I would read it and I would set it beside me and have a think about it. And then I would invite someone in for interview, and then they would think about it. So the process was quite slow. We had time to think about it. These days, if we don't respond to a CV immediately, we probably lose the best candidates. But we need to just pause, slow down. Don't react to those situations immediately. Take that time to process and engage in critical thinking and reflection. Ensure that reaction is measured. Is it appropriate for this situation? I'm sure that we've all said something in the heat of the moment that we later regret. So these days, I think patience isn't just a virtue, it's a superpower. So number 1, be self-aware. Number 2, improve your empathy. Of all the dimensions of emotional intelligence, empathy is the most easily recognized. Empathy is more important than ever in today's environment because of the increase in leading remote or globally dispersed teams. Some of us have a more structured approach where we know that we're based in a New York office and our team is based in London. Some of us are leading hybrid teams who are some days in the office and some days working from home. And some of us are leading teams that we thought were going to be right beside us today, but actually they have COVID, either themselves or their families, so they're not in the office. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a huge requirement for us to be flexible and to be agile. So the pandemic has really exacerbated that need for an empathetic approach to leadership. It had been, if we can remember back before COVID, if that's possible, there was already an increased demand and need for empathy in the workplace. But I think that it has really been exacerbated. We now have, up to 5 generations working side by side in the workplace. Each one has its own distinctive motivators and its own goals and own communication styles. I think we've all felt and remember that empathy of a sensitive teacher or friend. And we've all felt the absence of it when it's not there as well. Even going back 30 years ago to being at school, I remember the impact that those empathetic teachers had on me. When it comes to business, we rarely hear people being praised, let alone rewarded for empathy. But as an empathetic leader, we're given the opportunity to put ourselves into someone else's shoes. It doesn't mean, and I think that there's a misconception out there, that it doesn't mean trying to please everyone. Empathy doesn't mean that you're a people pleaser. It just means that we're thoughtfully considering other people's feelings along with the other facts in the process of making more expansive decisions. When we tune into the people in our teams, we pay attention to their body language and we hear what's not being said as well as what's being said. We build those deeper connections and that trust needed within teams to be successful. But what can we do to increase our empathy? We need to pay attention to the way others feel, particularly their demeanour, their body language, their facial expressions, their tone of voice. Taking that beat that we talked about earlier. Thanking people for their efforts, making them feel appreciated. When we can understand ourselves better and when we can develop that better sense of self-awareness and understand others around us and how we are similar, but also how we're different, we can just flex and adjust our communication styles and approaches to, again, gain that better connection, communication and collaboration. Put yourself into the other person's shoes. I think it's absolutely impossible to get through an hour of any day these days without hearing reference made to resilience. Resilience is not something that we're born with. It's something that has to be built like a muscle and then strengthened and maintained. We can't completely eliminate stress, and we certainly can't do it in the current environment. If we did, we wouldn't be alive and we wouldn't get things done. And Derek discussed this at length in a previous Genos Live. For me personally, I certainly couldn't get anything done. I need to feel that pressure and that stress to perform, a little bit like that manager who I mentioned earlier. But what we can do so much to manage those emotions, because as resilient leaders, we still feel stress, we still feel sadness, we still feel joy, we still have bad moods as well as good moods. We still have those emotional impulses just as everyone else does, but we find ways to control them and channel them in useful ways. The thing about stress is it's cumulative. It's not just the one thing that makes us stress. They all add up. A few weeks ago at 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang. And the first thing whenever your phone rings at 2 o'clock in the morning is you think something's gone wrong. I answered the phone. Is that Mrs. Aspinall? Yes, it is. I'm calling from the alarm company. You have a general fault on your home alarm. A general fault. Call me between 9 and 5. So it took ages for that adrenaline to dissipate and for me to get back to sleep again. 4 a.m, the phone rings again. Okay, so the only people that call me in the middle of the night is the alarm company who's already called, so it must be an emergency. Same alarm company, different person, same general fault. Then I go downstairs and there's a letter from the HMRC, and then I get an email from a client saying, urgent, can we talk? Now, if I had been going into an office with other people and leading a team that day, I have to wonder about how well I would have been aware of how those things were impacting me and how I might have shown up as a leader. Self-management matters in leaders because when leaders are in control, they create an environment of trust and fairness, and that leads to higher engagement and productivity and innovation. But self-management also has that trickle-down effect. Fewer bad moods at the top, fewer bad moods throughout the organization, and people feel more reassured and motivated. When you hold yourself accountable and you lead by example, people will follow you and do the same. How can we become more resilient? One of the most effective ways of managing emotions is to think about it from other people's perspectives. Exercising regularly, eating a healthy diet, getting enough sleep, and using other activities that help us to build that resilience, connecting and sharing with others, and managing as much as we can in this VUCA world, our deadlines and our workloads. Being authentic. Authenticity is about openly and effectively expressing ourselves and honouring commitments and encouraging this behaviour in others. It's where we build that trust and collaboration and effective teams. When you have a gap between who you are and the perception of who you are, or who you are and who you would like to be, that's where that insecurity thrives. It's that awful feeling of always putting on a front or pretending. It's exhausting to maintain that gap. And it causes anxiety and uncertainty and self-doubt. But that real journey to authentic leadership begins with an understanding of you and the story of your life. Your life story then provides a context and provides experiences, and through it, you can inspire other people and make other people have that impact. It's that personal experience that really matters. And it also includes the positive impact, but it can include as well those negative experiences, because motivation often comes from when we have experiences that of negative experiences that we've overcome, the bad times, the defeat that we've experienced. And that brings back that reliability and trust. And because we all resonate with stories, we all love to hear a good story. Storytelling really helps us to connect and motivate and inspire. How do we build that authenticity? Authenticity and authentic leaders really are defined by their values and their mission. So really knowing your values, know who you are and know what they are. Everybody's values are different. But what really matters, and I think what's important in authentic leadership, is to have integrity. It's the one value that I think is required in every authentic leader, and it's the one value that I have seen in every successful leader that I have met in my career. If you don't have integrity in each of your interactions, then people just won't trust you. And if they can't trust you, then why would they ever follow you? So expressing your thoughts and expressing feelings in a way that's sensitive to others, reflecting on that time and that place and that situation and the people, taking time to label and define how you feel. Facilitate and engage in difficult conversations. Don't shy away from them. As I used to say, don't ostrich them. We used to ostrich things all the time, and all that happens is it snowballs and it creates a huge problem. So number 4, be authentic. Clearly, emotional intelligence is worth spending some time on to understand and enhance. I am not here today in a sales capacity. The purpose of today is to raise an awareness and increase in knowledge and understanding of emotional intelligence in leadership. But when I'm looking at the 5 things that we can start to do to demonstrate emotional intelligence in leadership, it would be so remiss of me not to include training in the top 5. I don't expect you to take my word for it. These are the comments that have been made by people who have been on our Leading with Emotional Intelligence program. This is the most recent one that we ran. So things that are in here like life-changing and transformative and essential in leadership and excellent. Emotional intelligence training will help you consider questions such as, what kind of leader am I now? And what kind of leader do I want to be? So that training gives people the tools to answer the questions and to get them to work on being the leader that they want to be, similar to that best boss. So what have we learned throughout the Leading with Emotional Intelligence training programs that we've run over the last 18 months? We've asked the cohorts what was the most significant benefit to them by completing the program. And these were our findings. The number one was greater self-awareness. So that was the number one benefit that was felt by the people who have gone through the program. Number two is better understanding of others. So going back to that empathy that we talked about earlier, greater connection with team members. So that's really what I've been talking about the whole way through here. It's that connection. So that is being felt by the people who have gone through our Leading with Emotional Intelligence programs. Greater happiness at work. Don't we all want a little bit of happiness? We spend a lot of time in work. So wouldn't it be great if that time that we spent was happy time? And then more confidence in our own leadership ability. That was a significant one as well. People who came on the program, regardless of how senior they were in their roles, felt that confidence and that ability to have that toolbox and have those resources available to them to support them on their leadership and their learning journey. Wouldn't all of these things be things that we would want to create and enhance in ourselves as leaders? And wouldn't we want this in the people that lead us as well? They're all really good indicators of great leadership. Well, why is it all important? Well, an emotionally intelligent organization is a positive and productive workplace where people trust each other, where they collaborate, where they feel comfortable speaking up, where they share their thoughts, where they take action. Similarly, an emotionally intelligent leader is an individual who can relate easily to colleagues and to motivate teams and individuals to help to resolve that conflict and inspire others to take positive action. Bearing this in mind, the greater emotional intelligence that you possess as a leader, the greater potential that you can have to successfully bring groups of individuals together to accomplish amazing things and also to solve difficult problems and to create that innovation. More emotional intelligence that you can bring to a situation when dealing with clients, the better connected you can be to customers' needs and concerns, and the greater capacity that you have to win business with clients. So striving to boost emotional intelligence isn't just good for workplace productivity, performance and morale, and a good way to build a more positive working relationships, but it's also fantastic for our career and our personal development and our personal advancement. When I polled a group of people last week in a conference that I was speaking at, I asked them, what does your ideal leader look like? And this was their response. So I wanted to share this with you this morning. But look at all these amazing words that are up there. It doesn't matter if we ask this question of people who are new into leadership positions or people who have been in leadership roles for a while, or it doesn't matter what industry they work in or where they are situated geographically, or whether it's in-line or on person, we typically see these same words coming up all the time. We want our leaders to be empathetic and caring and authentic and honest and human and inclusive and inspirational and fair and supportive. All emotional intelligence skills. And I can guarantee you that if all these traits are important to you in a leader, they're going to be important to the people that you lead. And they'll expect you to be empathetic and inspiring and authentic and all of these other wonderful words that we see up here. Daniel Goleman sums it up perfectly, in my humble opinion. The interest in emotional intelligence in the workplace stems from the widespread recognition that these abilities, self-awareness, self-management, empathy, and social skill, separate the most successful workers and leaders from the average. This is especially true in roles like the professions and higher level executives where everyone is about as smart as everyone else, and how people manage themselves and their relationships gives the best and edge. So my top tips: become more self-aware by things like journaling, seeking feedback from others, being consistent in what you say and do, improving your empathy, take time to get to know those that you work with, pay attention to how they're feeling, consult others in decision making, become a resilient leader, sleep more, exercise regularly, engage in mindfulness, manage your time effectively, be authentic, be open and vulnerable, and honor your commitments and keep your promises. And invest in emotional intelligence training. You won't regret it. And I'm going to finish up with this part of the presentation with a quote that I love from Bill George. lead in a different way that my generation have, to be motivated by your mission, not your money, to tap into your values, not your ego, and to connect with others through your heart, not your persona, to live your life with such discipline that you'd be proud to read about your behaviour on the front page of the New York Times. Aoife, Derek, you can come on back in again when you're ready.
Great, thank you very, very much indeed, Ciara. Really, I don't know how you managed to cram quite so much into such a small period of time. Thank you, thanks a million. Now, I'm not going to keep talking. Aoife, I dare say we have some questions coming up from folks out there, so let's dive into that for the last sort of 15 or 20 minutes of the session.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ciara. I loved that line, to be motivated by your mission rather than money. If we could remember that every day, how helpful.
So important. Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I've always said, you know, the leaders that I know that have been hugely successful have been motivated by success rather than money, and their mission rather than money. And that's really, I think, what makes a big difference and differentiator.
Yeah, thanks, Ciara. So one of the first questions that we had sent in is a very good one, and something I think you're probably asked on a regular basis. And that is, can you measure the impact of an emotional intelligence training with a group of leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So really good question. I think the thing I love about emotional intelligence is its demonstrable behaviours. So you can see the behaviours right away, and the people who you lead will be able to see them. With the Genos programs, we actually have the opportunity to do an assessment before and after the program. So it means that you can actually ask your people at the beginning of the program. You can do a 180 or a 360, and you can ask your people at the beginning, how am I showing up, and how would you like me to show up? And then you can look at the gaps in between the two. And then we run the program, and then what we do is about 6 months from the beginning of between the beginning of the program, about 6 months later, then we will run the assessment again, and we'll see how the results have differed and where the needle has moved in terms of that, in terms of the learning and the behaviours. And we always find that there is a significant shift in that needle moving.
Okay, perfect. So you actually can get a snapshot of you know, a view or numerical results of how maybe a leader has improved as far as how they demonstrate their emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Before and after.
Let me fire one at you, if you don't mind, because I know Ciara, and she made some allusions to the fact that she moves at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it doesn't matter how early I'm up in the morning sending emails, she's back, boom, straight back with responses. So you move really, really quickly, and you talk about slowing down. How I'd say there are a lot of people on this call that move equally fast and get the results that way. How do you slow down? How do you actually take time to take a breath to get yourself a little bit more resilient and a little bit more present?
Yeah, really good question. I think like resilience is so it's so individualized, isn't it? So it's like the fingerprint. It's like your fingerprint. It's individualized, and what works for you is so different. But for me, to slow down, I really focus on exercise. So looking at the physiological aspects of resilience. So I really focus on exercise and diet and sleep, because sleep not so much. It's a work in progress. But the other two, the diet and exercise, because they're all interrelated. So I find if I don't get up in the morning and do a good workout, then I'll not eat very well, because I think, well, I'll just, have 2 donuts for breakfast and a coffee. And then I will follow that up then by not sleeping properly. And it gets into a kind of a vicious circle. So I think that the best thing to do is focus on what works for you in terms of building your resilience. For me, it's all about the exercise and the diet, and that's how I think I can manage multiple things at any one time, because I've got that ability to sit and focus, and I think that's really important. But it's not for everyone. For somebody else, it might be building those really strong relationships with people, getting out and connecting with people. For other people, it might be the environment that they're in as well. For me, the environment is really important as well. I've got to have clarity. I have to have tidy workspace. Things like that are really important as well. And I think in leadership capacities, I think that a lot of the people that I've been speaking to maybe weren't aware of how important that actually is to them.
I was really happy to hear you mention my diet of choice: two donuts and a cup of coffee for breakfast. Sounds perfect. Aoife, what else are we getting in there?
Yeah, we have several here. And just so you know, folks, and Ciara, if you see me looking down, I'm not being rude. I'm monitoring chats coming, comments coming in on YouTube, and that's so I'm not texting or whatever. So one of the next questions we have, Ciara, and again, this is a good one for people considering, with all the different areas where they can focus their training and development, making the decision to invest the time and effort and money in emotional intelligence. What do you see, or what tends to happen if there's a lack of emotional intelligence in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think we get the opposite to all those wonderful things that we just talked about in terms of the benefits of emotional intelligence training. So what I have found, particularly in the current environment, and what we've gone through over the last 18 months or 2 years, actually it is now, is all about that empathetic leadership approach. So people our people have that expectation that we are going to be empathetic, that we're going to be understanding, that we're going to be supportive, and I think that we're moving more towards a culture that where people are put at the heart of the organization, and where HR have a seat at the table. And I think if we don't start having this empathetic approach, if we don't have the high levels of self-awareness and awareness of others, then what we're going to end up with are all those behaviors that we want to stay away from. So those unproductive behaviors in our Genos model, of that kind of disconnection, that insensitivity, that we create that untrustworthy environment. So we really need to focus on creating that psychological safety within organizations. If we're not doing that, people aren't going to trust us. We're going to have that untrustworthy environment. We're going to have people who are indifferent, and ultimately what's going to happen, instead of being able to attract and retain our people, and instead of having our people who are going to bring a lot of discretionary effort and who are going to innovate within our organizations, they're going to leave, or they are going to, they're going to be disengaged.
Yeah. And it seems, I know Derek and I have definitely experienced this with some of the companies we work with, and it can be tough, especially I know personally as a female leader, to show vulnerability when you're in a position, and I definitely know a lot of the people we've worked with have been celebrated for being vulnerable during a difficult time, particularly over the last 2 years. And that's so what, there's so much for leaders to focus on, right? And they have to be resilient themselves, because of course they can't pour from an empty cup. Is that the term? Can't pour from an empty cup.
Cannot serve from an empty vessel.
Yeah. So there's all these different areas for them to focus on this year, but what would be, obviously you've covered, your top 5 tips there, but one of the questions we had in from Mary is, what areas should leaders focus on in 2022?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I think that the number one is always start with you, start with the self-awareness. So that's really kind of the foundation of emotional intelligence. And I think I was so unself-aware, it really going through the process. I thought that I was, until I started, reflecting back and asking people around me, and I realized how, quite how much I had to do. But I think if you always look at focusing on yourself, so looking at building that self-awareness, and through that, then connecting with the people around you and understanding the people around you better, then that to me is the logical place to start, because then everything builds on top of that. So you've got your resilience and your authenticity and your inspiring performance. But if you don't get you right first, then you're not going to, exactly like you said, you won't be able to help anyone else.
Derek, would you have any comments to add to that?
Yeah, I think the first thing, it all begins and ends with you. And Ciara made a really good point during the presentation. And it's one that's made by a lot of people, but we really need to hear it. And that is that the way you show up as the team leader has, because of emotional contagion, an enormous impact upon the people in the team. So if you don't work on yourself first, if you're not building your own self-awareness and building the ability to be more resilient, well then, and modeling that, it's very hard for people to get a sense of how they go about it. So I think that's one of the things that's absolutely critical. Actually, let me throw, if I can, Kira, let me throw something at you, and we used that as an opening question before we had that little technical snafu, and we were asking the audience watching what was going on, or what they thought. And I'm curious, when you find yourself, because you do, and I do, and Kira and Aoife does, and everybody else in the world, when you find yourself really starting to creak, and you think, God, I'm going to hit the wall, I'm under pressure here, what's your go-to? How do you pull yourself out of that? How do you go and find a little bit of joy, just to kind of get you back on track?
For me personally, because I am a crazy extrovert, I get my joy from the people around me. So I just need to spend time with people, and that can be any random person in the coffee shop to, you know, to good friends and family, whoever will chat with me, basically. But it's stepping away from that desk. And I think in one of the programs we talk about the work of Susan Pinker and all the research that she's done on centenarians and how you live to be 100. So apparently I'm going to live until I'm 140 because all I do is chat with people. But I think that is really important in terms of, you know, identifying what's right for you and what is going to give you that opportunity to fill yourself back up again. So I just need to step away from the desk, go and spend time with people, and then whenever I come back, I feel that energy again, and ready to go. And just organization as well. Sometimes if something isn't flowing, then just leave it and come back to it again at another time. There's nothing worse than sitting looking at the same thing and, you know, getting into that space of, you know, 3 or 4 hours, and you realize you haven't actually done anything about it apart from stared at a blank screen.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and that's the extroverts, as you say, plug into other people. What do you do, Aoife?
I definitely like to be with nature. So I live in an upstairs flat and we don't have a garden. So I tend to just go down the stairs, out the door, and we have a lovely road by our apartment. And it's beautiful, and the birds are singing, and there's sheep and bunnies and everything. So walking down that road, listening to music, or even just listening to nature. And I'd probably be in the middle. What's the in-between extrovert and introvert? Is it ambivert?
Ambivert,
Ambivert. So I definitely do feed on the energy of other people, but particularly the little ones in my life. So my nieces and nephews, my friends' kids, you know, you spend an hour looking at a 10-month-old baby like my little nephew, and that kind of just fills me with energy. So yeah, nature and friends, I think. And sometimes it's just quiet time, or it's even watching an episode of something like Downton Abbey on Netflix to decompress at the end of a stressful day. So depends on, it's having that self-awareness in the first place to know what you really need that particular day. What about you, Derek?
Yeah, mine is, it won't surprise anybody who knows me has heard me say this before, but I have a 5-year-old grandson, and when he comes in through the door, sometimes he says to me, "Do you need a recharge, Granddad?" And at the recharge, he'll give me a big hug, and he'll say, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" And you know what? Because I started talking to him about recharging, it's really interesting when you set up that expectation that little hug and that little face is going to recharge you. It actually does. So when he comes in, he says, "Do you want to have a recharge?" You get that hug. You can feel yourself recharging, and it's important just to know. What are the 1 or 2 things I can do that will just serve as a semicolon in my day and just allow me to pause and then move on? And like you say, if you're an extrovert, it's different to the ambivert, it's different to the other one. The that's the one I was looking for. Yeah, the introvert. And it's just important to tune into it. Now, we're coming towards, I reckon before we do the closing messages that we've about 5 minutes left. And I'm just wondering, if somebody is looking at this in an organization or an individual in an organization, they're saying, I really need to get my leadership tuned in to be more emotionally intelligent, or I need to get myself up to speed on emotional intelligence. What are the best one or two pieces of advice of what they need to do next, Kira?
Yeah, I guess we try to ask, right? That would be the best thing to do, because in terms of the information that we can provide for people at that time, because we've gone through so many programs and we've got so much feedback from the people that have gone through it, and because we've gone, we started off with pilot programs in small companies, and they've grown and it's kind of trickled down. So we've got information from clients, specific information from clients on the impact that it's had on their businesses. So that if there's specific information that people are looking for, then they can reach out to us and we can provide them with that support. It is a journey, isn't it? There are other providers out there, and you need to make sure that program is right for you. So I think in terms of we take the learning experience really seriously, and we make sure that it is the right program. So it would be a lot of kind of questions back and forward about what it is that they want, and also making sure that we're delivering what they're looking for.
Great, thank you for that. Anything you want to add from anything coming in there that we should share with folks before we go to the kind of closing messages there, Aoife?
No, we had. I feel like you have covered all of our questions. And folks, we are sharing a link in the chat on YouTube and LinkedIn. Apologies for the technical glitch. We did some digging and found out it was actually LinkedIn's connection. So our streaming software is working, but it doesn't want to talk to LinkedIn today. But everyone can catch up with the recording, probably here on YouTube is where you're watching it. Yeah. We will send it out afterwards. And we're also including a link to the various resources that Kira's mentioned today and Derek's mentioned. And Kira's also thankfully kindly shared a copy of her slides. So what I did the last time I went to a session with Kira was either print out that recap slide of the top 5 tips, or save it on your phone, stick it up in your office, and you have somewhere to look when you're really looking for those quick piece of advice for how you can be more emotionally intelligent in leadership. So that's it for me. Thank you so much, Kira. That was absolutely wonderful. I'll
really
pass
was.
back to Derek.
As always. No, really appreciate it, Kira. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
So now, as Aoife said, we have a resource page set up that will have a link where you can contact Kira, a copy of her slides, a link if you want to register just to get a reminder for the weekly sessions, and then if the idea of a masterclass for your people on helping people to deal with anxiety in challenging times, if that sounds like something that's timely for you right now, well then you'll find a link there that allows you just to request a little bit more information. Now, I mentioned at the outset, at the beginning of the session, by the way, do you notice this morning in the office here, I didn't close down the blinds because over the last while it's been so dark and dim and the sun hasn't shown its face for an age. And classic Murphy's Law, as soon as you leave the blinds open, the sun comes out and it's beaming in here. So as you can see, and it's wonderful. You can already feel it I can already feel it kind of recharging myself. But we're back on the 24th of March. We're back with 2 folks who are going to talk in a very practical way about how you can directly target a significant increase in productivity by targeting an increase in emotional intelligence. They're going to show you how that works, how you measure it, and what sort of results you can expect to get. It's a little bit later than usual because these folks are in Tampa, Florida, so we're going to be at their breakfast time and at our lunch time. Promises to be a really great session. So we have covered the questions, so I don't need to go to the questions. So I want to thank you, particularly want to thank Kira for a really, as always, great session, upbeat and full of information. Thank you to everybody who behind the scenes was scrambling to get things sorted out when we got that little bit of a technical blip. And thank you to those of you who had the patience to move from LinkedIn across to YouTube when things went pear-shaped with that connection. We will see you on the 24th. Meantime, wish you all the very best. Take care. Bye-bye.